Hey, what's up, buddy? Welcome back to News Dose. And Xbox's lineup for 2026 on paper sounds absolutely amazing. You might remember that Phil Spencer a few months back seemingly teased the Big Four will make an appearance next year, being Gears of War, Halo, Forza, and Fable. Here's the thing, though. We just got more information today thanks to a new leak, and all I can really say is that lineup just got even more exciting. So stay tuned, and we're going to get into all of that, as well as the keycard situation for the Nintendo Switch 2. Fans are very excited about a new turn of events, but however, there might be reason to proceed with at least some caution, and we're going to go over all of that as well. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go and get right into things, though, starting off with Shinobi Art of the Vengeance. It will be out later this week. I believe it's August 29th, but reviews went out today, and it sounds like this is exactly the return that fans have been craving for all of these years. Currently has an 88 overall score on Metacritic with a total of 43 reviews. So that's a pretty good sample size, and most critics seem to be raving about its art style and really also its combat, which apparently is exceptional as you would hope for a game like this. Something to keep in mind with this game, though, is that it's Sega's first revival of many, many more to come. A few years back, of course, they greenlit several of their dormant franchises, including Jet Set Radio, Golden Axe, Crazy Taxi, Shinobi, as well as quote-unquote more. So this, I'd say, is a pretty good sign for all of those other games as well. Sega is clearly putting a lot of effort into this project, and hopefully that will carry over to those other revivals as well, because, I know Sega fans have waited far too long by this point for these games to return. Now, unfortunately, we got news for a delay today, and this is for the long-awaited Game Pass game being replaced. Now, it's been delayed a few times already, so maybe this shouldn't come as a major surprise, but it is one of those games that's captured the imagination of a lot of fans. This is really one of the more anticipated upcoming independent titles because, just look at it. The art style is absolutely striking, and as long as it plays as good as it looks, then yeah, this could end up being a special game when it eventually releases. However, we will now have to wait until spring of next year, though personally, I think that's perfectly fine. I'd much rather them take their time and get things right than to rush it out. Though at the same time, I will say that they do need to proceed with that spring release with at least some caution. You have to kind of keep in mind that GTA 6 is planned for May 26th. So they will need to navigate that situation with some care because anything that releases near that time frame has the potential of being overshadowed. Oh, and here's something really exciting. If you have a Switch 2, you might be happy to hear that Digital Foundry is describing Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate as the best-looking Switch 2 game to date. Now, to be fair, there's not really a lot of games out for it just yet, but nonetheless, that's music to my ears. Final Fantasy VII Remake is just an amazing game, and I really want to see more people enjoy it. So to hear that Square Enix might actually put out a good port, not only I'd say is good news for this particular title, but also for a lot of their games that could potentially come over to the Switch 2 at some point. The Kingdom Hearts series immediately comes to mind. That feels like a perfect franchise to put on Nintendo hardware, not some cloud port, but an actual natively made game. And I'd say by all indication, at least when it comes to Final Fantasy VII Remake, Square seems to be putting a lot of effort into the Switch 2 version. And in fact, we also got news that it has a 40 FPS performance option, which is something that I hope becomes the norm for the Switch 2 this generation. It does have that 120 Hz display, and that means that developers can implement 40 FPS knowing that every single Switch 2 owner will have the ability to use that option, which is something that they can't do on other consoles because everybody has a different TV with different refresh rates. And I am a big believer in 40 FPS. I've talked about this before, but to me, it's the sweet spot for PC gaming handhelds like the Steam Deck. To me, I think it feels much better than 30 FPS, and you can still get pretty good visuals. It really is that good middle ground. So it's nice to see that developers are already taking advantage of that 120 hertz Switch 2 display, and I hope that's a sign going forward. And speaking of the Switch 2, a lot of people are going crazy over the idea that Yooka-Laylee will have a true physical release with everything included on the cart. I mean, I've already seen some people claim victory online because they believe that third-party studios are actually listening. And as much as I would love for all of that to be true, because I want true physical versions as well, it has been pointed out that maybe we should proceed with at least a healthy dose of caution, because there are some unknowns to this story. So what's happening here is that all of this comes from VGP, which, if you don't know who they're a Canadian retailer, and a really good one at that. I've ordered from them on multiple occasions, and I really like them for just physical game collecting, because not only do they import games that aren't easy to get without paying a lot for shipping and handling, but they also do a lot of reprints for rare games as well. So they get an easy recommend from me, but even still, the reason to proceed with caution is because they listed Yooka-Laylee a bit earlier compared to other retailers, and because of that, it's difficult to fact-check their information. As far as I'm aware, they're still the only retailer listing it so far, which, hey, that's perfectly fine, as long as all of their information is correct. Though, that's where the question starts to come in, because they have it listed at $50. And that somewhat stands out because it's the same price as the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox versions. Now, keep in mind that the Switch 2 cartridge costs a lot more than a PlayStation 5 and Xbox disc, which is exactly why we're not seeing a lot of true physical games for the Switch 2. And in some cases, like with the Mortal Kombat Collection as one such example, the Switch 2 version is actually more expensive than it is on other platforms. So for Yooka-Laylee to be the same price, that would either mean that Playtonic is eating the extra cost for the Switch 2, or that they're marking up the PlayStation 5 and Xbox versions to give the Switch 2 version price parity. Now, just to be optimistic for a moment, I will say that by having everything on cartridge, that's actually a really good way for them to advertise. A lot of people and a lot of outlets are currently talking about this game because everything is allegedly on cart. And that's kind of big news, given how rare that is for the Switch 2. So that extra cost for the Switch 2 cartridge could basically be their way to advertise. It's getting all of these people, all of these outlets to talk about their game, which, I mean, that might actually prove to be a smart thing if that's what they're actually doing. They're kind of the talk of the town right now. And I also want to go ahead and point out that VGP was one of the first places to claim that Fantasy Life I for the Switch 2 will be on cart. And that was actually correct. So I do lean towards this being true just because VGP is a reputable company. However, at the same time, I have seen some concern online that maybe they're mistaken, because it's possible that they saw these placeholder box arts without context, and then they just kind of assumed that everything was on the card because there's no key card label on these pictures. So I think the safe thing to do here is to just kind of proceed with a healthy dose of caution before you pre-order. Maybe wait for more retailers to put up their listings to compare, or wait for an official announcement from Playtonic themselves. They are going to have a big reveal on August 29th, so we might only need to wait a few more days for more concrete information. Again, though, I hope all of this turns out to be true just because Yooka-Laylee is a perfect game for the Switch 2 in so many different ways, and having a true physical version for it, that really would make it all that much more appealing. Now, one more thing before we go. We got an exciting Xbox leak, which actually follows up what we talked about late last week. Now, in case you missed my previous video, there was a company that accidentally teased some information ahead of time for what was more than likely Forza Horizon 6. They posted it up on Instagram before they eventually took it down, but more or less, because the car that they're working on together is so rooted in Japan, there's speculation that the location for the next installment will be in Japan. Well, now we can actually add more weight to that rumor, because Windows Central is claiming that they saw documentation that suggests the Forza Horizon 6 will be revealed at the Tokyo Game Show next month, and the reason for that, according to Nate the Hate, is because the next game is indeed set in Japan. Yeah, you can see here where he said accurate. Barring any late pivots, intent is to announce Forza Horizon 6 at this year's Tokyo Game Show, which takes place in late September. The game's setting is Japan, making TGS an apt venue for reveal. Before you ask, no, I have not heard of a Switch 2 version. And that is something to kind of keep in mind about all of this. Will Forza Horizon 6 launch as a multi-platform game? I mean, we know that Xbox is open to multi-platform games. There's no doubt about that. But there has been a question about whether or not they're doing the old bait-and-switch strategy. More or less, are they porting older games to attract consumers to a future exclusive when it launches first for Xbox and PC? So, I mean, we might find out soon enough with Forza Horizon 6 and even Gears of War E-Day, both of which seemingly are going to release in 2026. But either which way, if the next Forza Horizon is truly set in Japan, that really, to me, makes this game that much more exciting. It's really been one of the most requested locations for years and years, and, I mean, Playground is just so good. Right now, they're debatably the best racing studio out there, definitely when it comes to arcade racing, so having their pedigree and taking all that to Japan for their next location, that, I think, is incredibly exciting. But let me know what you all think about this. Are you excited about a potential Japanese location for Forza Horizon? And also, what do you think Xbox will do? Do you think that Forza Horizon 6 will launch as a completely multi-platform game? Or do you think that it'll first launch as an Xbox console exclusive? Let me hear it below. Anyways, though, that's going to be for this episode. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.